problem is that we're not
Blacks
telling
here in
the
this
truth.
city have
Starting
made
to use
significant
drugs earlier
contributions.
in life than they ever have.
Welcome to Minority Focus. I'm Jimmy Moore, and we often encounter things in our lives that lead us in directions we don't necessarily intend to go, and then some very special things happen to us sometimes in life that lead us from those arenas of life and take us in a whole other direction. And a perfect example of that is our guest today, the Reverend Anthony Walton,
Yes, sir.
who is now a resident of Paducah. Yay!
Yes, sir. Happy to be
Moved
here.
to the city.
Glad to be
Welcome.
here. Thank you,
Glad
sir.
to have you.
Glad to be here.
have you.
Glad to be here.
Encountered you a couple of weeks ago. We talked a time or two.
Right.
I think over the phone.
Mhm.
And then on my job, I encountered you a couple of weeks ago. You gave me a very interesting book to read. Of late, I'm not the reader. I don't read a lot.
Okay.
I read what's necessary. But I started this, and I finished it.
Good.
And I called you that afternoon,
Yes,
that
sir.
same
You
afternoon,
did.
to tell you
You
I had
did.
finished it. And
You
it
did.
was really excellent reading about the things that have happened to you in life, from Convict
Yes, sir.
to wearing.
Well, actually, it was from comedian to convict
Is that right?
and to Christian.
Right.
You know, it's all the transformations that I guess sometimes people don't expect in one line of work to actually transpire and transform into something else. Because during the time that I was doing comedy, I wasn't ever thinking about I might have to end up going to prison.
Right.
So it happened.
It was like something that I remembered reading, that this one something that you did that you thought was gone.
Oh yeah,
So you had already transgressed, from that
lifestyle.
naughty lifestyle
Mhm.
to something wholesome and worthwhile and all that, and then this came back.
Right. And I guess that's kind of how life does with all of us. Sometimes we think that things are covered up, and that's what we do. We kind of cover them up, but they don't go away. But as far as I was concerned, it was in the past. I was trying to develop a different kind of lifestyle. The comedy thing came up, and I was doing real good in that. So the criminal kind of lifestyle was kind of put behind there, even though my mind and heart was still kind of messed up. But I was changing. I was changing into that other lifestyle. That entertainment field is kind of treacherous within itself, but at least I wasn't doing all that other criminal type things that I was doing before. So that thing came up, and I was doing real good. Doing real good in the comedy thing.
That's something I was thinking about as I was reading about the mentality that was there before you started the comedy thing. Like, I don't know what your environment was in your past,
Right.
but in a lot of cases where young men get into things and they get a mindset about how to live and they never get out of it.
Right.
What got you out of that in the first place?
Well, sometimes.
Or almost out of it.
Almost out of it. Sometimes you grow and you just start doing things. It's interesting because I was a country boy raised with chickens and hogs and outhouse and all that, and a very abusive situation as a child, and you carry a lot of anxieties, carry a lot of bitterness, carry a whole lot of things inside of you that you just act out. And that's what I was doing. I was acting out a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustrations that I had as a child, and being basically bullied in a sense. And I just felt like that I needed to start doing something to build up my self-esteem. And a lot of that was a result of how I was raised. And a lot of times we don't really think about how a childhood can cause a person to actually alter their life. And I graduated high school. I started boxing, taking karate, judo. I started carrying a gun because I felt like all of that would help me build up my self-esteem. And I started doing things to make me feel like I was somebody important, and usually it was hurting other people. And I always would cover my feelings with comedy. Comedy always helped me to feel like that I could at least do something that make people laugh, because I didn't do a lot of laughing at home. So I wanted to change people's lives through laughter. And I remember, even though I was doing a lot of things at night, I was crazy about Richard Pryor. And I was going to Tennessee State University, and I studied and remembered a monologue of his, and I could interpret his voice and everything. And I went on a talent show at Tennessee State University, and I did a whole Richard Pryor monologue, and they loved it. It's like, wow, this is what I'm supposed to do in life. This is my calling. And so after doing that, it's almost was like a light switch went off in me. Okay, I'm through with the bad boy thing now. Let me focus on this comedy thing. Something that I never really thought that I would be able to stand up in front of people, right, and make them laugh or whatever. And it was happening for me. So when it seemed like it became so easy, and people would pay you for that. Right. You know, people would give you money to stand up and tell lies and make them laugh. Right. And it seemed like something that I enjoyed doing, and I was making other people laugh. So it just was a transition. Right. It was a transition. And even though I don't think I actually changed inside, it was just another transition, another phase of life that I was going in that was making me money. And the atmosphere was still basically the same. The women, the drugs, the alcohol, the limelight, all that, it was still the same, but in a different direction.
Right. I know, so many people, and most of them we just learned about how many people were in love with Richard Pryor. I mean, love.
Right.
I got a little skid myself out to him.
Oh, do you really?
Richard, I'm walking down the street routine.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I did the wino and junkie. That was my routine. That was the routine that got me in the door. I did the wino and junkie. And back in the day, I was telling a guy today, I could get my voice to do all kind of things. I'm getting older now, so I barely can. With all the preaching and everything, I get hoarse a little bit, so I can't really do anything. So don't ask me to do anything. But that was my idol, and that's what I wanted to do, and it got me in the door.
I know. Even as you move into the later part of your life, that settled part of your life,
right,
when you settle down and things come to you that should, and you behave as you should, and all of that. I'm getting around to the old people saying that when you come to Christ, when you come to doing things and living in a Christianly way, in a Christ-like way, that it's based on your childhood. The old saying, train up a child in the way that he should go. Were there things about your childhood that stayed there, that came back to you to help your growth after you got to that state?
And that is so interesting that you bring that up, because I tell parents today, bring your children to Sunday school, whether they want to or not. It shouldn't be their choice. It should be something that you do, like you just quoted, train up a child. That means you have to take them through the process of doing things so that it becomes a part of their life. We went to Sunday school. We went to church. We were made basically to go to church. Right. It wasn't such thing as staying home because you want to. Exactly. You went to church. And even though sometimes my parents might not have acted like they were supposed to act, we were at least in church. We were taught what to do and how to do things. And unfortunately, it kind of did something to me in a sense, because I didn't want to have anything to do with church when I left church, because of all the things that were happening around me that I didn't feel like were right. And it caused a lot of bitterness in me. But then after going to prison and really seeking God, and I tell people this all the time, I never even thought about praying until the night I almost committed suicide. I never even thought about God. I never thought about my childhood or anything like that until the night that I was getting ready to put a sheet around my neck and take my own life. Somebody left a Bible in the corner of the prison window. And that Bible snapped me back into reality and made me realize that there was a God. And I started remembering all the Sunday school lessons. I never remembered a sermon. But I remember the Sunday school lesson from the Sunday school teacher that constantly told me that Jesus loves you. And that is what snapped me into reality and made me start seeking this God of my Sunday school days. And from that, it just began to be a process.
You know, excuse me, according to some of the things you see on TV, movies and what have you, when someone goes to prison, Christianity, Christ, God, Bible, church and all that is in some cases a ploy.
Right.
You know, to influence maybe their parole
Right.
when that happens. In a lot of other cases, it's simply a matter of I've got nothing else.
Exactly.
Man has put me here. I can't get out. There's, you know, only God can.
Right.
So I'm gonna get with him
Right.
to see if I can get out.
Exactly.
You know, and some of the things that people do while that they go through when they, you know, in a Christian way when they're in prison, are quickly forgotten when they get out
You're exactly right.
because they've accomplished their purpose.
And you know, sometimes, and there are some reality to that, but I do believe also that a person, when they get to that point in their life stops, and they see that they need to get in touch with God some kind of way. I believe that some of it is sincere. Some of it. Some of it is a ploy.
Right.
But some of it is sincere because they've sobered up. Their freedom is taken away from them. I don't know who has ever been incarcerated wanting to be there.
Right.
You know, their freedom is taken away from them. When you take a person's freedom away, that is something that you can't even imagine unless you've gone through that. Because your freedom is taken. You cannot do. You get 3 meals. You get to sleep. You know, you get a place to sleep and eat and everything. But you don't have any freedom. And anytime a man or a woman get in that kind of condition, I think their inner soul tries to reach out to God for some type of sanity. Right. Because you could easily lose your mind in an area like that. And I think their soul reaches for some kind of sanity, but because they don't really grab it like they should. Right. And really, some of them don't really know what it means to have a relationship with God. Right. And without that relationship, you can get out, because the majority of them do get out, and it's like, oh, free. Right. You know, and okay, who is God? Let me just go about my business again.
I think going to prison is one of the most horrifying thoughts, I think, you know, that could happen to me. I tell my family and my friends, if someone tells you that I did something that's an offense that you go to prison for, you call them a liar and you go sell a house, right, and you get whoever you need to help me, you know,
get out, right,
go, because
right,
I didn't do it. I'm
right,
not doing anything to go to prison. That's a horrifying, I think, again, from television and reading and what have you.
Right.
From day one, when you were incarcerated, was that horror there for you? I know you said you had the martial arts under your belt. You knew you could take care of yourself and all of that. But even still, was it horrifying?
It was horrifying to the fact that I didn't know what to expect, and everybody looked evil and mean and like they could kill you. But I guess because I was so devastated at the time that I went in, and it seemed to be so unfair at the time that I went in, that I wasn't really afraid in a sense. I was more heartbroken and hurt and devastated. You know, I had just fallen in love. You know, I don't know if you know what love really, but I had fallen in love, nose wide open. You know, I'm crazy, man. I was in love with this woman, and we had only been married for 2 years. And when I went to, you know, we were basically newlyweds when I went to prison, and that was the main thing that was on my mind. I could not function knowing that I was going to be locked up for 12 years. I didn't know how long 12 years was going to be. Sure. You know, I'm thinking 12 years, I can't do 12 years. So when I go in prison, I was more devastated than anything. I didn't really think about the dangers. And I guess because I was arrogant to the point to where I felt like I could take care of myself. You know, and it was really arrogance. I think sin kind of make you crazy a little bit, make you think you're Superman. You know, you can do all these things. You know, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. You know, so I'm thinking, you know, Hollywood. You know, you can't distinguish Hollywood from reality sometimes. So I'm thinking that whatever happens, I can take care of myself. So I wasn't really that afraid of the atmosphere, but it was just the whole incarceration thing, and being away from my wife, away from my family, being told when to take a shower, when to eat, when to go outside, and just the walls that's caving in on you, and hearing them lock the doors on you, and you can't get out, and then going outside and seeing all the barbed wire. You know, that it constantly reminded you that you were in prison, and it was every day.
Not just the dealing with just being in, but while you're in, you deal as much with what's happening outside.
Exactly.
As you do this.
Exactly, because he would say, well, you can't live outside, but you can't hardly help but to, because you're talking to people out there all the time, especially your family and, you know, your mom. And I think my mom and dad were going through a divorce at the time that I was in. And my wife was going through all kind of things, and financially we lost our apartment or whatever. She had to move in with her brother. You know, there's a lot of things that were happening that it's like, well, look at what I've done to my family. You know, and it was, even though you were in there, you wanted to do something to help, but you couldn't. You could do nothing. The only thing you could do was to call them, worry them, basically, you know, pray for them or whatever. But anything that you needed, they had to help you, and so you put more burdens on them.
I mentioned in your book that you had, you know, fairly consistent visitation.
Yes, yes.
From your family, especially your wife. And speaking of, came by my job the other day, and told me that you sent a message that you look forward to being there. And I looked in her eyes and I thought, yeah, I see what. Very beautiful lady. Beautiful,
yes, sir. She got a beautiful personality. It just everybody that she meets basically is attracted to her because she has something inside to give to everyone. Very caring person.
Okay. You've been in, and you've done the. Did you do all the 3 years?
Three years, 2 months, and some days.
Never forget that.
Never forget it.
I'm surprised you say that some days.
And some days, and some hours. Yes, sir. I'd never forget it.
But in your book, you talked about the changes that went on with you, God-wise.
Right, yes, sir.
From whatever your experiences were towards him while you were there, did you know, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that when you got out, or the day you got out, or when you got out, that you were going to be about his business?
I did know that. I felt that I was going to be instrumental in the kingdom of God. Didn't really know how. And to be honest with you, I never wanted to see another inside of a prison as long as I lived. The first year I got out of prison in 1987, I drove by the prison a few months afterwards and broke out in a sweat. Just driving by it. And it just, I never could see myself going back inside a prison to talk to anybody about anything. I said, I'll talk to them when they get out, but I won't go back in there and tell them anything. Let them find out like I did, you know. But so happened, God just allowed me to be able to, after a year, to go back in and to minister to them. And I'm still doing that even now, just going in. But I never really thought I would be a pastor. Right. I really did. Now, if I did, I thought maybe way on down the line, you know, but I've always wanted to do what I'm doing as far as the prison is concerned, going in and just ministering to inmates, letting them know that you can change.
Is that something that you do very often?
I do it as often as I possibly can. I go even to the McCracken County Jail as often as I possibly can, talking to women and men. And I just had a meeting in Nashville, Tennessee, during Black History Month, where I talked to a group of inmates, about 90 of them. Went down there and did that. And anytime that I have the opportunity to talk to inmates, I do it because I feel like I'm a show and tell. Right. You know, I've been out since 1987.
Exactly.
You know, and I have not gone back in. I have not been stopped by the police for nothing except maybe speeding, you know, but nothing serious, you know, and I've been on the straight and narrow. And I was just as devious and as criminal-minded as anybody could be. And if God can change me, then he can change you. And that's the message that I tell them, you know, because it is a real supernatural relationship, not just a religion or denomination. Exactly. It's a relationship, and when you get that relationship, it will change you.
How receptive are incarcerated people to you? Do they look at you in awe, or are you something they do or don't want to be? How do they respond to you when you talk to them?
From what I get is usually kind of different, because when I walk in, when I walk in the door, they usually look at me real funny, especially if it's a mass of them. They're looking at me real funny, like, okay, what are you doing up in here? And I can kind of hear the background, the noises. Yeah, come on up in here, you know. And I walk in there and I turn around and face them. Basically, I normally start out with my testimony, and normally as soon as I give my testimony, you can hear a pin drop. I have their undivided attention from that time on, because they know that I know how they feel.
Exactly.
And that to me is a whole lot better than somebody that maybe has never gone to prison, that comes in and try to tell them how good God is and that God can do whatever. When here I am, I was right there where they are, and now I'm on the other side of the fence doing the will of God.
Right.
So I'm hoping that it gives them hope. From what they give me back, I get letters, and because I've given away quite a few of my books, you know.
Can we see that? Can we see a shot of that book?
I've given away
By
quite a
chance?
few of them, and I get a lot of letters back telling me how good the book has blessed them, and just the testimony how it has blessed them, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful.
Wow.
When I feel like that I can contribute something to people, you know, men and women. When even though what I went through was traumatic, even though I came close to suicide, even though it was hard for me, I thought I was going to lose my mind. Even through all of that, I can turn around and use that
Right.
and say, God has brought me out of that, and He can bring you out of that as well.
You know, there are like what you call the hardcore criminals. There are some nice people, some good people, who are confined in a more drastic way, maximum security.
Right.
There's some good nice people, and at the same time, in some of the lesser, there's some mean people that
Yes,
they need to
Yes,
switch
sir.
places.
You're right.
Like
You're
this.
right.
You know.
You're right.
Do you ever encounter any of those people who are like, nobody's lost to God?
Right.
But do you ever encounter those kind of people who decided they are?
Quite often, there are some that have basically given up hope altogether, and those are the most, I won't say the difficult ones, but those are the hardest ones to reach, because God to them is a foreign alien on another planet that could care less about them, and sometimes their whole life has been filled with nothing but drama and heartaches, difficulties, disappointments, and it's hard to come in just to give them a little hope, because they're so hardened and so bitter, and it's almost like if they were to get out, they would probably hurt somebody because they're so upset.
I think about gangs, you know, and that indoctrination they do to them. It's going to stay
Yes.
until they just get like put somewhere where they have the opposite happen to them, where they're constantly not bombarded, but taught this other way.
And people have to be retrained, but prison really, unless they have programs, you know, prison really does not rehabilitate. You know, because one thing I tell people, because you can't rehabilitate sin, you really can't. You know, sin has to be dealt with by God. And even though you give people lessons and you train people certain ways or whatever, if they have not changed inside, they're going to go back out, and they're going to hook back up with the environment that they left. And it's almost like they would have to have something inside them to want to change.
Right. Don't misunderstand. Now, Happy got some good food. You know, I eat stuff from Happy's, you know. What was it like from the onset when you decided to put that edifice there right across the street from Happy's?
Well, you know, it was really not my decision, to be honest with you. My pastor in Nashville, I was happy. I was managing a grocery store. I had my prison ministry going. I didn't even know anything about Paducah, Kentucky. Never heard of Paducah, Kentucky. And he was put in charge of selling that building for our organization. All of a sudden, he said, the Lord spoke to him and said, yeah, right. You know, he said, make this, you know, redo this thing, fix it up, and make a church out of it. And I'm thinking, what idiot is going to drive all the way from Nashville to Paducah to start a church when you don't have nobody there? You know, that's what I'm thinking. And I was on my way from Nashville to St. Louis one time with him. We stopped in and we was kind of helping the guy work on stuff. I'm thinking, man, what crazy person is going to be up here doing it? And a guy came to stay 7 months, said he couldn't do it. I volunteered to come just until he found somebody.
Right.
This was in 1998, April 1998.
Right.
I said, I'll go up there 3 months at the most until you find somebody. So what has been 7, almost 8 years now.
Yep. No conflict. Happy's across the street, and you over here?
No, actually, the first month that we was there, this was shortly after something happened, I think, over there with his dad. Somebody threw a whiskey bottle through the window and broke the window out. Eugene took up an offering
He's a good
to
person.
help us to pay for the window. And that began our relationship.
Right.
And at first, when we first moved, got there, but you couldn't hardly drive down the street.
Yeah.
It was so crowded and packed with people. Said, "You want something? You want something?" You know.
Right.
It was everything.
Right.
But we came out. We had street services outside. You know, even now we got a speaker that we sit right outside the door,
Right.
and we just blow it out. And God, and we blow it out. And sometimes during the summertime, you drive by there, we outside on the corner,
see.
instruments, everything,
see.
just blowing it out, because it's like you charge the atmosphere with God. The devils are either going to come in or they're going to run.
Right.
So we're just, you know, we're just on fire.
How's the
with
growth?
anointing.
How's the growth? Growth going?
God is blessing us.
Okay.
Oh, He is blessing us. We started with just my wife, my son, and I, and he was the drummer. Couldn't play. Now he plays the drums,
Right.
keyboard, bass guitar. He plays it and sing, does it all. And God has sent us some people that are on fire for Him. Young people, young married couples, and He is really blessing us. He's really blessing us. You would be amazed if you came in on a Sunday
And
morning.
I know now that this little city that you never heard of, you love, right?
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. You know why I love it? Because this is where God sent me.
Yes.
This is where God sent me. So if I love God, I love what He does.
It's a good place to be. We've only got a minute or so
Okay.
so left. You give Under the Shadows, the name of the book by Anthony Walton, Under the Shadow. Can anybody get a copy of this? Where can
Sure.
we go to get a copy of this?
Just call 270-575-3823
We'll get
and
that
let me
number
know.
up. We'll get that number up, and maybe some other people would like to. I enjoyed this.
I'm glad you did.
It's the first through and through reading I've done of anything in a while.
That's a shame, though.
Got a lot to go on. God bless you.
God bless you.
God
Thank you
bless
so
you.
much for having me here.
God bless
Thank you so
I'm
much.
glad you
I
came.
appreciate
And
it.
maybe we can get back with you sometime
We
and talk
will.
about some of the
It'll
other
be
things
good.
that you have going on.
That'll be good. I
Hope
would
so.
love to
Maybe
do
I'll
that.
come visit you one day there. See, my pastor don't play there too tough.
I can imagine. But I'll tell you one thing. If you ever come, you would never forget it. You would
doubt
never forget it. I guarantee that.
Thank you, Anthony Walton.
All right,
Really
God bless you.
appreciate you coming.
Thank you so
Hope we'll
much.
see you again sometime.
You will.
Take care. If you get a chance, go by and see some of the things going on at the corner there on 12th Street with Happy's Parlor. As I said, with Happy's Parlor.
Yeah, we're happy to show you. Yeah, you can do both.
And encourage the goings on and the people like Pastor Walton who are helping to make our city a better place. For Minority Focus, I'm Jimmy Moore.